Good afternoon. It's time for our next keynote speaker. So we've got Erikjan Franssen from Diamanti joining us to talk about all things containers and how can actually utilize new technology to actually make your digital transformation journey much simpler. How are you, Erikjan?
I am very well. I'm having some audio challenges here, so let me in 1 second.
To actually make your digital transformation journey much simpler. How are you, Erikjan?
I am very well.
So, I shall leave it to you.
There you go. That was the problem. There you go. I'm in. So you can hear me okay? Perfect. I'll share my screen. So hi everyone. I hope you can listen to my presentation here. So my name is Erikjan Franssen. I've already shared my introduction in the intro video, but I'm from Diamanti. I've been with Diamanti for the past 18 months. I've been running Diamanti in EMEA, helping them set up and establish themselves in the European market, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But I've been in and around the IT industry since about 2004. So when it comes down to digital transformation, I think I have a pretty good view, and I've seen some of the developments happening since basically 2004. The majority of that time I spent inside of HPE, Micro Focus. So I've seen my fair amount of what I would call digital experiences or high IT teams can deliver value towards their business. So I think I have a pretty good understanding of that. So if you look at digital transformation, the problem, and I think that most of us on the call here or listening in or listening via LinkedIn would recognize, is that can be sometimes a collection of buzzwords, right? Because in the IT industry, and especially ourselves as vendors, and I have myself included, we are very well equipped and well utilized to designing new keywords and buzzwords to make something sound very interesting, right? We talk about Kubernetes, we talk about cloud, we have DevOps, cloud native containers, container storage interfaces, talking about AI ops. Everything these days is AI ops, right? And some of those promises are really looking at applying some technologies in new areas. But it's kind of important to cut through when it talk about digital transformation and also the role of Diamanti in that, to cut through to what the real value is you're bringing, right? Because all of these words and all of these names and all of these terms that are mentioned on my slide here, they all have something to do with digital transformation and they all play a role. But as Friso rightfully shared in his previous session, my colleague Friso, it is about people, processes, and technology. And I'm going to give our view, Diamanti being a container-centric company, I'm going to give my view on what I feel digital transformation is. And I decided to basically start by just look up what the word digital transformation would bring. And I'll let people quickly read their screen. But it basically says it's digital transformation is the integration of technology into all areas of the business, and it fundamentally changes how you operate and deliver value to customers. Now, I have to make an addition here. I think it's value to stakeholders because it could be employees as well. It could be shareholders. It could be anybody in the market or anybody that a company or an enterprise interacts with is delivering value to. But it also a cultural change, and this is the people element that requires organization to continually challenge the status quo, experiment, and be comfortable with failure. And there's a lot in this sentence because I feel that some of the audience on the call here might recognize that in their larger enterprise, especially as you hit larger enterprises, the change or the digital change is usually being put in and the projects are being designed for digital transformation, but then continuously challenging the status quo can be a big problem, right? Some companies do experiment, they do have these pilot cases, or what I would say, they set up proof of concepts, or they set up basically these small environments where they test out new technologies or test out new solutions, but they're not comfortable with failure, right? There's a ton of our enterprises that are not comfortable with failure. And I think at the heart of digital transformation sits that you challenge that status quo, you experiment, and you're able to fail fast. The most successful companies that I have seen that are disrupting the market, and the majority of them, I have encountered them in Europe, are coming from Israel, actually. What they were always comfortable with failure. So they fail fast, and they say the faster we fail, the sooner we learn. And I think that is a step in digital transformation that some of us here in the Northern European region and in the UK and some of the more established countries have not really adopted as part of the digital transformation area. And I think it's very important to leave the audience with a message here today that I think that is a key factor to succeeding. And technology can play an amazing role in it, because technology will enable you to make things simpler and easier. And if it's simpler and easier, it's also easier to experiment with it and fail fast, learn from it, and deploy a new way of working. I can tell you that the development of Diamanti inside of our organization follows the same logic. So we try something out, we fail fast, we learn from the market, we learn from initial test, and then we move forward to actually releasing a product or a final product. So why would we talk about, if I talk about this high level notion of people, process, technology, why would I then go in a deep dive and go straight into Kubernetes, containers, and cloud native? Because that's like a drop from 40,000 feet back to 100 yards high, right? That is a very, very big drop into the depths and breadth of technology. Well, first of all, of course, I have to admit, I'm from Diamanti, so we are a technology vendor, as Friso rightfully said. So we are comfortable in talking about technology and how technology can bring solutions. But second of all, I started to dissect what containers, Kubernetes, and cloud native are, right? Because the power of containerization is that it fundamentally changes the way application developers create and deploy applications. In containers, you have this much more agile approach where you have not so much functional teams delivering entire applications, but you have different solutions groups building different Lego blocks, which are then be created to be connected together and then can be deployed. And what that does, it basically enables a culture of quick time to market, so you can easily develop components, you can easily adjust components, improve components, continuously challenge the status quo, because you can now update your capabilities and figure out whether, if your update you add it to it, can add additional value. And it actually helps you to fail fast. And I think that's important. So if you look at my previous slide where I dissected the word digital transformation, I think that the power of containerization with an orchestration layer of Kubernetes and the drive towards cloud native is actually following the same logic because of its capabilities and its possibilities. Now, if I look at the current audience, we are much more the IT organization oriented, and we are actually the facilitators of what needs to happen. And I think that we are needing to facilitate this in an easy, seamless way from an application and operations perspective. And that is what this presentation is actually about. Because it's about, in what we say, it's about breaking down silos and not creating them. Because what happens with these new teams or these new formatted teams is also easy to build up different silos, right? Because you might have in your legacy organization a database team, a middleware team, and an infrastructure team, an application team. But when you look at how to manage this, if you look at the cloud native development, there's a ton of applications that are greenfield, but in most enterprises, they're brownfield applications. We're not all working in startups that can just say, well, let's develop a brand new app for a customer interaction. Because if you're a financial institution, there is an application, there is a general ledger, and there's an application that helps you deal your customers with bank accounts. Well, you don't migrate that easily to an agile application, nor maybe should you want to. There's a ton of applications that you'll have to look at from the back end to the front end. Again, financial services is a great example where I think a ton of work in financial institutions is being done on the front end, giving me that slick customer feeling. But if you then look at the back end, the majority of that is still run by mainframes. A very important distinction as well is between stateless and stateful. When we turn cloud native and we develop these fast apps, what we always focused on is these applications that are stateless. Because stateless applications is very easy because you don't have to take care about the data and about storage or the persistency of the data that the application gets. But when you take about stateful applications, where there could be a ton of value in making them agile as well and making them cloud native as well, it becomes a whole different ballgame. As I just mentioned, lightweight and data intensive. And then there's the whole new world of deployment options, right? We are talking about on-premise infrastructure, but there's life cycle projects that have to upgrade infrastructure components, and some applications require newer infrastructure. But there's existing infrastructure that is still running because it's doing what it's doing and applications really liking it. There's the public cloud, and then there's multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. And I think that most of us live in that world between that on-premise infrastructure, a drive towards public cloud, but then also multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, right? I don't believe that digital transformation is being set by driving your entire infrastructure estate to Amazon, because I believe that is a similar drive than outsourcing your entire organization to IBM in the past. You're still locking yourself into a single vendor. So I think the future is into that multi-cloud, hybrid cloud way of working, where you can determine the deployment options based on security, compliance, cost, speed, and those kind of elements. So I think that is a very important notion when it comes down to this. And then obviously complex distributed solutions, multiple components, multiple vendors, requiring advanced Kubernetes skills. Kubernetes is one of those badges of honor that you have on your LinkedIn account, where you log onto your LinkedIn and you say, hey, I am Kubernetes certified, but are you really having those required advanced Kubernetes skills? And then even if then, as an enterprise, are we able to attract that talent that can actually help us out to do this? And then it makes it difficult to scale and manage in an enterprise environment. I just mentioned security. How is security going to treat a distributed application that doesn't have a stable network connection, but has network connections all over your internal and external network? That is a complication where a security team might say, well, we're not accepting that. And then, as I just said, enterprise operationally ready. There's a ton of things that need to be taken care of, like multi-tenancy security, telemetry, backup and recovery, but then also enterprise support. In fact, Kubernetes and containers and the start of that is an open source project. So are you able to deliver your enterprise application through a technology layer that is open source, where in a standard situation, you might be logging onto GitHub and hoping that somebody at Apple or a smart other developer in an organization might be able to help you out and see how to resolve your issues. So I think that is a very important notion of the start of the digital transformation area in the terms of applications moving to cloud native. And I think these are some of the challenges that we need to answer to. So it actually needs to be tomorrow's enterprise needs with cloud scale and performance, security vulnerabilities, management and insights, and it needs to be an integrated control plane where you have a singular experience that will break down the silos, and that singular experience should be entirely focused upon delivering your application developers and your application deployment teams the ability to deploy any application at any time in a agile, containerized fashion, and then be vendor agnostic. Take decisions based on cost of infrastructure, take decisions based on compliance, take decisions based on security, and deploy it in an optimal way. and be able to have that, what I would almost compare to a fish market type of pricing situation, where you compare the big cloud providers to private cloud providers or an on-premise cost. And I think that's a facility that should be given by us in the enterprise space when we talk about this sort of capabilities. Because what you want is basically application of freedom across these hybrid clouds, right? You might have your development of a very data-intensive application. You might develop it in cloud because it's easy, it's fast, and it's accessible. You might develop that in Amazon. But when you make your calculations about cost, you might decide to run production in the data center, because you model out that if you run that application on top of your Amazon contract, that application will not cost you tens of thousands of pounds a year. It will cost you hundreds of thousands of pounds a month. You might say, hey, I have a production in the data center, but I want to burst and expand this to cloud because I want to go into a new cloud region. I want to go into APJ, or I want to burst it into an Amazon cloud to have new access from new customers. You might want to say, hey, I want to burst and expand it from data center to data center. So I developed it in a data center, I run it in production in data center, but I burst and expand it into another data center. Or I want to run it into production into my own data center, but I want to have a migrate and a failover situation in the cloud for my application. Those are the types of what I would call use cases, or infrastructure operations use cases, that you might think of when you go into cloud native applications, and that's the power of what they can deliver. But that needs to be simplified, right? You want to have an enterprise domain console where you manage all these components of infrastructure, whether it's a managed service provider type of situation, or whether it is your enterprise domain situation where you're separating finance from sales and HR, or any functional area you want to address. So now it's by the time I'm still going to introduce a little bit about the Diamanti capability. I've set out before what I feel digital transformation is. I set out before why I feel Kubernetes, cloud native, and containerization is very relevant in that. And I've set out what that capability should bring. And now I'm going to introduce a little bit about the Diamanti concept and the concept of what we bring to market. Because what effectively we do, we provide, as Diamanti, we provide a global management control plane with all the metrics and observability, all the policy and access control, all the lifecycle management for managing these different components of cloud native infrastructure, whether they run on premise, whether they run on Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, Azure Cloud, or whether they run at an external data center. You are able to manage and migrate those applications with our Spectra control plane and manage that. And then the real power of our product sits in the ultimate hybrid cloud data plane. Because what we bring is a container storage interface. We bring in security, a container network interface. And some of these are really important. So our container storage interface basically takes care of the storage persistency, no matter what the underlying storage is going to be. Whether you migrate that application into Amazon, you want to have persistent storage. And if you want to migrate it on premise, you still want to have persistent storage. Compare it to Portworx, but what we do is build up from the ground up. We come from the hyper-converged infrastructure situation, so we have a really high level of knowledge of what goes underneath. Our container network interface, I was just talking about before, about how an application needs to behave like a proper network citizen in order for security to sign off. Well, our CNI is doing exactly that. So we have the capability of making it perform like a regular network citizen, like you would log on with your iPhone to a Wi-Fi in a hotel or a public office. That's kind of what that capability brings. And it's a software layer, it's a hybrid cloud data plane that you, again, can run in any cloud. You can run it on premise, but you can run it in any cloud. And it gives you the ability to migrate applications, including their data, from the one area, from the one piece of infrastructure to the other piece of infrastructure. Now, what that brings to, what that combination of Spectra and Ultima brings to you as an end customer, it brings to you persistence. It brings you persistence in storage, so it brings to you data persistence. It brings to you portability, because it will allow you to migrate across these applications. And last but not least, and I haven't talked about that, because of our accelerate capabilities in there, it brings you performance. And I will share with you some numbers as I come later on in my presentation. So where do you deploy that? Obviously, it's all based on the open source version of Kubernetes. We support Red Hat OpenShift, but we also support the vanilla Kubernetes, cloud native certified. In fact, Diamanti is a big contributor to the cloud native foundation, and we are delivering some of the cloud native certified elements that are now available in Kubernetes are actually invented by the original founders and the engineers of Diamanti. And then obviously it's built towards deploying this in Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, on-premise, but also think about telco and edge use cases. We have tons of discussions with telecommunications companies right now that deploy our capability inside of their new cloud native 5G core applications that they might want to run in their central data center, but they might also have capabilities required at the edge, and they want to manage that from a central management plane. That's what they're going to do with Spectra. And Ultima allows them to manage those applications as they run on-premise, or potentially, and some of the telecommunications providers are going there, potentially in cloud. Well, Eric, that's very nice, but so what? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for a business case? Why should I invest in this? And I'll try to answer that a little bit in the next few slides. We've done some comparisons. We've done some comparisons of our combined Spectra capability and the Ultima capability, and we've done that versus public cloud. And this report is available. And we've taken basically a standard SQL database performance, a containerized version of the SQL database versus cloud vendors. And this is an independent benchmark result, so it's not done by Diamanti. And you can see us, we compared ourselves against Amazon with Nitro, which is the acceleration capability of Amazon. We compared it to Azure. We compared it to some of the other, to an Azure Premium, an Azure Ultra, and we compared it to a Portworx. And these are some of the tests and the results that came out of it, right? If we were 10 times cheaper and 4 times faster compared to Azure, we were 13 times cheaper and 6 times faster compared to Amazon Nitro. There was zero I/O wait time. So, and this is all done with our software and a standard SQL database. Can you imagine if these workloads increase, what that would mean from a financial perspective, but also from an application delivery perspective and how people consume applications, because no longer are performance issues interacting with it. So what is then an ROI on Diamanti? I'll share some of the figures. So we run the entire Know Your Customer stack inside of a leading financial institution in Italy. And effectively, the entire Know Your Customer stack is actually built up at the core of that application is basically elastic. Know Your Customer, some of them people that might be listening in from financial institutions might know what that is. It's all about tracking the customer behavior throughout the entire life cycle of that consumer, whether they talk about mortgages, whether it's digital interaction, or whether it's about interaction with the service center. And the elastic footprint was basically reduced by about 90% as compared to the standard infrastructure it was running on, since it was running on Diamanti. So can you imagine how many dollars that would free up, not only in basically physical buying of infrastructure, but also infrastructure management, data center space, databases, network connections, management overhead in terms of lifecycle management. So I think that was a very good use case. Another example is Splunk. Some of the people that might be engaged with Splunk here, Splunk is renowned for having trouble with indexing. We have been able to prove inside of a large media and entertainment conglomerate that we can do 25 to 34 times faster indexing. So with that faster indexing, you have faster data ingestion, and you do TCO savings. And you do massive performance in order to make that successful. I just mentioned a lot about SQL Server. Kafka is another one. We run a leading travel firm. Basically, they're behind every travel booking in the United States. Probably not as relevant in these COVID times, but travel is picking up in the US. And what they need to do is interact and basically manage life and look at the interactions. Basically, if you book a flight, you add a rental car, then I deselect the rental car. They have a time for a next best offer. They use Kafka for that, but in order to do that, you need performance, because if Kafka doesn't capture the actual event, and if you're unable to capture the actual event, the event is lost. So you need performance infrastructure for that. And then there's another example on MongoDB, where we talk about some of these use cases. Most of our customers are running either bespoke self-developed applications or some level or form of these high performance required applications in a cloud native fashion. They are all present from energy companies to financial institutions, to telecoms providers, managed service providers. So there's tons of examples that we're looking to give. So I think I'm 5 minutes ahead of my schedule. I hope I've been able to give you some context on how I view digital transformation, why I feel that Kubernetes and cloud native and cloud are relevant in this segment. I hope I've been able to give an example of what I feel that infrastructure and applications teams and application managers and infrastructure managers should be able to provide. A simpler experience for the users to simplify the landscape across all the options that they are. I hope I've been able to give that feeling of that experience, what it would mean if you can run that application in dev test and on-premise and then move it to cloud. And then I've been hopefully be able to give you some examples on what Diamanti does, a general feel of the product, and how you can build a business case to add technologies like these to your application landscape. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. Do reach out to us. Do reach out to Lee. Lee, thank you for this opportunity to speak here. And maybe there's some questions left.
We've had too many questions come in, but one of the key things is some of our non-technical staff are saying that they actually understand what you're talking about, which is quite unique when they're watching technical demonstrations and presentations. So that's quite a good one anyway. So, but that was an excellent presentation. And I say it is very difficult. I think when you look back to what happened at a few years ago when people started talking about cloud services and cloud, no one understood what that meant. The cloud could be used for so many different things, couldn't it? But if you think about what you've just covered there around what digital transformation means for an organization, you've covered it really well. It's about interacting better with your customers. It's allowing your internal users to communicate with each other and also with external customers, and to automate effectively what the business is trying to achieve to improve that customer experience.
Spot on.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. What we're going to do is jump over to our breakout sessions second. So thanks ever so much, Erikjan, and we'll catch up with you later. So a couple of things that we've got now. We've got a couple of breakout sessions starting in a second. The first one is Boris, who's going to cover a bit more around the technical aspects of what you can achieve using containers and Kubernetes and using the platform. We've also got Ross Cooper-Smith, who's going to cover off a little bit more around the scalability, performance, also multi-protocol, so utilizing both file and block-based storage that for your intelligent infrastructure requirements for a digital transformation. So please make sure you jump over to the sessions and join the session you're looking for. The sessions won't appear until 3:30, but please get ready to go and jump in and pick whichever session sounds more appropriate to you. Thank you very much for your time again, and I'll see you again with my keynote session, which is actually at 4 o'clock, where I'm going to talk about compliance and risk management. Thank you very much.